I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to catch his wife cheating. Honestly, I always believed that if you loved someone and trusted them, then everything would work out. Megan and I had a pretty good life, 2 kids, a nice house, and a shared passion for renovating our old historic home. We were doing this massive restoration project, and honestly, it kept us busy and somewhat happy, at least on the surface. I thought we were solid. But looking back, there were little signs that I ignored, things I convinced myself were just her being busy or stressed, but now I realize they were clues I missed. Megan, been a bit bitchy lately, more than usual, and she always snaps about the smallest things. Little comments about how I don't understand how hard her job is, or she's so busy, she doesn't have time for my stupid questions. I shrugged it off. She's always been a bit of a drama queen, and I thought maybe she was just overwhelmed with the house, the kids, her job. She's an interior designer, so she's very particular about how everything looks, and our renovation was her baby. But then, random things started happening that I couldn't ignore anymore. It all started when I noticed her phone going off at weird hours, even when she was supposedly working or visiting suppliers for the renovation. She'd quickly hide her screen or toss her phone face down when I entered the room. I didn't think much. Maybe she was texting a friend or so I told myself. But then, I caught her in a lie. She said she was meeting with a vendor at some fancy tile shop downtown, but I found a receipt for a stained glass artist, Jake, who she said she'd just been chatting with about window restorations in our house. Only, the dates didn't match her story. One afternoon, I was walking past her studio where she works on mood boards and samples, and I noticed a bunch of these professional-looking photos of her and Jake together. They weren't just talking about the windows. No, they were laughing, close, even touching in some of the pictures. My stomach sank. When I looked closer, I realized the background in some of those photos was actually from a set of background images from the supplier's website. I looked at the images more carefully and, wait, I saw them during material selection trips. But she had told me she was at the warehouse picking out tiles and fixtures. Turns out she was with Jake, the stained glass artist, during those trips. They had been meeting secretly, and I bet those visits weren't just about choosing glass. I kept my cool at first, trying to process what I was seeing. How could she lie so easily? She's always been a bit manipulative, good at spinning stories, throwing blame, making it seem like I was overreacting. But I knew better now. There was no way she was just meeting a vendor. I felt my blood boiling. I kept thinking about all the times she snapped at me for not trusting her enough and how she accused me of being paranoid. Well, now I knew where that suspicion was coming from. She had been sneaking around for weeks, maybe longer. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing, replaying the photos I'd found, her lies, the way she'd looked at him in those pictures. I felt betrayed on a level I never thought possible. This wasn't just a little fling, it was a full-blown affair. And I had no idea how to confront her, whether to do it calmly or just blow up and demand answers. But I knew one thing: I couldn't ignore it anymore. The trust was shattered and everything we had built was now in question. I needed to decide what to do next, but right then, all I felt was a deep, aching anger and disappointment. When I finally decided to confront her, I wasn't prepared for how she would react. Megan, of course, was her usual bitchy self, defensive, dismissive, and full of lies. I sat her down in the living room, the photos burning a hole in my mind, my fists clenched so tight I thought my knuckles would bleed. She looked at me with those sharp eyes, like she already knew she was caught and that she'd spin her way out of it. "Seriously, you've got to be kidding me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady but angry. "Who the hell is Jake, Megan, and what are you doing with him? During those trips you said were about selecting tiles. It's him, isn't it? The stained glass artist." Her eyes narrowed. "Oh, come on, Jack, you're overreacting. It's just business, just work. You gotta understand, I'm under a lot of pressure with this house, with the renovation. Jake's just a contractor I hired to restore those damn windows. That's it, nothing more." I couldn't believe her lies. She was good at it, I'll give her that. She kept lying and I kept pushing, demanding the truth. "You expect me to believe that you're just asterisk working with this guy. You've been sneaking around behind my back and you think I'm stupid enough to buy that?" She scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Look, Jack, I don't have time for your accusations. Maybe I did meet with him a few times, but it's not what you think. We're not having sex or anything, okay? It's just material stuff, okay? Nothing more. You're making a huge deal out of nothing." That was a lie, plain and simple. I saw the photos, the way they were close, too close for just some work-related meetings. I could feel my jaw tighten, the rage bubbling up. But what hurt even more was her absolute lack of remorse. She just shrugged it off like it was nothing. That's what she does: lies, dismisses, gaslights, like she had every right to cheat and lie because she's under pressure. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her and tell her how much she'd betrayed me, but I just sat there feeling numb. Inside, I felt a cold sense of loss, like I was losing her, losing us. And it wasn't just about the infidelity. It was about how easy she lied, how little she cared about my feelings. That's when I realized she had been lying to me for months, maybe even longer. The aftermath of that confrontation is what's really burned into my mind. I remember the silence that followed her dismissive attitude, the way she looked at me like I was a stupid fool for catching her. I wanted to believe she'd break down, admit everything, but she didn't. Instead, she doubled down. "Look," she said, "if you're gonna keep acting like this, we're not gonna get anywhere. Maybe I need space, maybe I need to do my thing. Whatever. Just stop accusing me of stuff I haven't done." That's when I realized this wasn't going to be a quick confrontation. It was the start of something much worse. I felt like I'd been punched right in the gut, blindsided by someone I trusted more than anyone. I sat there for a long moment, trying to gather my thoughts, trying not to lose my mind. The emotional impact hit me hard. I felt this strange mix of anger, sadness, and betrayal. It was like watching someone you love turn into a stranger, someone who's capable of lies and betrayal without even blinking. My mind was racing with what to do, how to fix this, or whether I even could. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. The way she dismissed everything like she didn't care about my feelings at all told me she'd already made her choice. I had to decide if I was going to fight for this marriage or walk away. But right then, all I wanted was to make her realize she'd crossed a line I'd never thought she'd cross. I just didn't know if the damage was repairable. After that night, I didn't sleep. My mind kept circling around the images, the lies, her tone, and the way she dismissed what she'd done as if it was nothing. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck, but at the same time there was this fierce fire inside me, like I refused to be the guy who gets cheated on and just takes it. I knew I needed a plan, but I also knew I couldn't just confront her again without some kind of proof. I had to be smart about this. The next day, I started digging. I went through her phone, her emails, everything I could find. I wanted to see if I could find more evidence, something concrete that I could use to confront her again, or maybe just to understand how deep this thing really went. And what I found was worse than I expected. She'd been texting Jake almost every day, hiding her messages behind fake names and deleting conversation histories. I found photos she'd sent him, flirty, naked selfies, even. I couldn't believe she was so stupid, like she didn't think I'd catch her eventually. I felt a flush of pure rage. How could she do this? How could she betray everything we built, everything I did to make this house beautiful, to support her dreams? I had poured so much into us, our home, our kids, and she was out there cheating on me with some artist she met during material selection trips. It was like I was dating a different person, someone I didn't even recognize. I knew I couldn't just go off half-cocked. I needed leverage. So I started taking screenshots, saving her messages, and even calling Jake's number once to hear his voice. I wanted to get a sense of how deep this really was. That call, I kept it brief, but I could tell he was lying, trying to pretend he didn't know what I was talking about. I had enough now. I realized I had to do something about this, not just for myself, but for my kids and our future. One afternoon, I set up a camera in the house, in the living room, just to record her. I wanted to see if she'd slip up or say something that I could use. It was a big step, spying on my wife, but I felt I had no choice. I couldn't trust her anymore. Sure enough, that night she came home late. When she thought I was asleep, I turned on the camera and watched her. And what I saw made my stomach turn. She was on her phone, texting Jake again. The way she whispered into the device, the way she looked around to make sure no one was watching, she wasn't even trying to hide it. She was planning something. I could see the signs, her nervous glances, the hurried typing, and then suddenly her grabbing her coat and sneaking out again. I knew where she was going. She was meeting him probably for sex or whatever it was they were doing behind my back. I felt this surge of fury. That was the moment I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I wanted her to feel what I was feeling. I wanted her to understand how betrayed I felt, how much she'd broken my trust. So I decided I was going to set a trap, not just to catch her, but to make her see how much she'd screwed up. I started planning my revenge, knowing that I couldn't just walk away, at least, not without making her regret her choices. The next day, I arranged for a private investigator to follow her. I paid him good money to track her, to see where she went and who she was meeting. He confirmed everything I suspected. She was meeting Jake, often late at night, sometimes at hotels. I was sick to my stomach, but also relieved that I finally had proof. Now I could confront her with everything and she wouldn't be able to deny it. That evening I sat her down again. This time I laid everything out, screenshots, recordings, the Pi's report. She stared at me like I was crazy, but I saw the flicker of guilt in her eyes. That moment I knew I had her cornered. Her bitchy attitude turned even nastier, trying to deny it all, but I didn't buy her lies anymore. I knew exactly what she was doing, and I knew I had to decide what to do next. Because honestly, I was done being the fool. I wasn't going to let her cheat and lie and then pretend it was all just a misunderstanding. I'd had enough. After I laid everything bare on the table, screenshots, recordings, the investigators' reports, Megan's face twisted into something almost unrecognizable. Her eyes flashed with anger, contempt, and maybe a bit of panic. She looked at me like I was some kind of crazy person for digging so deep, but I didn't care. I'd reached my limit. I felt like I was finally seeing her true face, the bitchy, manipulative side I'd ignored for too long. She immediately started with her usual bullshit. "You're overreacting, Jack. This isn't what it looks like. You're just jealous, or maybe you're insecure. I don't know, but I swear there's nothing going on. You're blowing this out of proportion." I couldn't believe her. The woman I'd loved, the woman I'd built this life with, was now this complete stranger throwing out lies like they were candy. Nothing going on. I repeated in disbelief. "You've been meeting with this guy during our renovation trips, during work hours, I might add. You've been sending him naked pictures. You've been planning to meet him tonight. Tell me, Megan, what the hell is going on?" She crossed her arms and rolled her eyes, still pretending she wasn't caught. "Look, Jack, I've told you it's just work. Jake's a talented artist and I needed him to restore the windows. That's all. You're just insecure because I'm busy and I don't have time for your accusations." She was good, too good, but I knew her tricks now. I just stared at her, feeling the cold, hard truth settle over me. This wasn't just a fling, this was a full-blown affair, probably going on for weeks if not months. I felt a tight knot form in my stomach. It was a mix of fury, heartbreak, and the deepest disappointment I'd ever experienced. I stood up slowly, voice low and steady. "You think I don't see what's really happening here? You're cheating on me, Megan, during the trips, behind my back. All those times I was trusting you to do work with Jake, you were screwing him, weren't you?" She blinked rapidly, trying to hold her composure, but her face betrayed her. "You're crazy," she said, voice rising. "You're just jealous because I'm doing something for us. You're insecure, that's all. You think I'm having sex with him, please. You really think I'd do that?" Her arrogance was infuriating. I felt the blood rush to my head. She had no remorse, no guilt for what she'd done, just more lies, more denial. I realized then that she'd been lying so well for so long that she might believe her own bullshit, but I didn't. "Tell me, Megan," I said, voice trembling with rage. "How long has this been going on? How many times have you lied to me? Because I see the pictures, I hear the recordings. You think you're clever, hiding everything, but I found you out. I found everything, and I'm done." She took a deep breath, eyes narrowing even more. "Fine," she spat. "You want the truth? Yeah, I've been seeing him. I like the attention, okay? He's interesting and I'm bored with you. But it doesn't mean anything. I'm not leaving you and I'm not sleeping with him. It's just material. It's just sex, Jack. Get over it." That's when the coldness seeped into my bones. Sex, just sex. That's what she told herself to sleep at night, but I knew better. I knew it was more than that. It was betrayal. It was her throwing everything we had into the trash for a guy she barely knew. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. My hands clenched into fists as I stared at her, realizing I'd spent years trusting her, caring for her, loving her, only to find out she'd been cheating right under my nose. I'd been naive. I'd been stupid for not seeing the signs earlier. Now, I was just angry and hurt and exhausted. I told her to leave that night, and she did, with her head held high and some snide remark about how I was overreacting. As she walked out the door, I watched her go, realizing I had entered a new chapter of my life, one where I had to decide whether I was going to forgive her or finally take control of my own happiness. The pain was deep, but inside I felt this strange calm, like I knew I had to do something, something I wouldn't regret later. The days that followed were the hardest of my life. I kept replaying everything in my head, trying to understand how I missed all the signs, how I let her manipulate me for so long. The house felt hollow, like the walls echoed with her lies, her duplicity. I knew I couldn't keep living in this state of betrayal, not without doing something about it. I had to act not just for myself, but to finally get some clarity on what my future would look like. I started by packing her things, not because I wanted to throw her out or make her feel guilty, but because I needed to take control. I wanted her to see that I wasn't going to be her doormat anymore. As I packed her clothes, her cosmetics, her jewelry, I felt this rush of anger mixed with relief. I realized I'd been a fool for so long, believing her lies, trusting her when she'd been secretly sneaking around. Now I saw her for what she truly was, a manipulative bitch who thought she could get away with anything. While she was gone, I took the time to think things through. Did I want to save this marriage? Could I forgive her? Honestly, the thought of staying with her after all this was almost laughable. She had lied, cheated, and dismissed my feelings like they were nothing. But I also knew that sometimes people make terrible mistakes and need a second chance. Problem was, I wasn't sure I was one of those people willing to give her that. I reached out to a lawyer just to understand my options. I wanted to know what I'd be facing if I decided to file for divorce. The process, the finances, the custody arrangements, everything. I wanted to be prepared. My mind kept going back to her bitchy attitude, her lying face, and the way she dismissed my feelings. I knew I couldn't just forgive her and pretend it never happened. Not after the photos, the recordings, the evidence I had gathered. That betrayal cut too deep. In the meantime, I also reached out to a therapist. I knew I needed to talk to someone who could help me process all these emotions: anger, sadness, disgust. Sitting there, spilling my guts to a stranger, I realized how much pain I'd been suppressing. I thought I was strong, but inside I was crumbling. I told the therapist everything, about her lies, her affair, how betrayed I felt, and my doubts about what to do next. One thing was clear: this wasn't going to be easy. Megan's reaction to all this was predictable. She called me a stalker, accused me of destroying her life, and tried to guilt-trip me with stories about how she's been under so much stress. Yeah, right, I saw right through her. She thought she could spin her way out of this mess just like she had with her lies, but I wasn't falling for it anymore. I was done being the fool. I made a decision that day. I would confront her again, not to beg or plead, but to lay everything out plain and clear. I wanted her to see the damage she'd done, to understand that she couldn't just lie her way out of this. I was tired of her bitchy attitude, her dismissiveness, and her manipulations. It was time to take control, whether that meant fighting for the marriage or walking away for good. And so, I waited. I knew she'd come back, maybe to try and spin her narrative again, but I was ready. I had the evidence, I had my resolve, and most importantly, I had finally accepted that I deserved better than this betrayal. Whatever happened next, I knew I would be okay. Because I finally saw her for who she was, a lying, manipulative woman who thought she could cheat and lie her way into a better life. Well, she'd learned otherwise. When she finally came back that evening, I was sitting in the living room, my arms crossed and my face set in a hard, unyielding expression. She looked stressed, nervous, trying to act like everything was fine, like she hadn't just been caught red-handed, but I wasn't buying her act anymore. I looked at her and saw through her, saw the bitchy, manipulative woman she'd become. I didn't say a word at first. I just let her stew, let her try to spin her lies again. But I knew better than to fall for it. I finally broke the silence. "Megan," I said, voice steady but cold, "I've had enough of your lies. I've seen everything, your messages, your photos, the investigator's report. You've been cheating on me for months and you think you can just come back and pretend nothing happened. That's not how it works." She looked at me with that smug, bitchy smirk, like she thought she could manipulate her way out of this just like she always did. "Jack, I don't know what you think you saw," she said, trying to deny it again. "You're overreacting. I told you it's just sex, just some material thing. I didn't mean for you to find out this way." But I was done listening to her lies. I stood up, feeling the weight of everything I'd been through. "No, Megan, I've had enough of your bullshit. You lied and cheated, you used me, betrayed me, and thought you could get away with it. Well, I'm not gonna be your fool anymore. I've decided I'm done with this marriage." Her face twisted into a look of pure disgust. "Fine," she spat. "If you want to throw everything away over some stupid pictures and a few lies, go ahead, but you're making a huge mistake." I shook my head slowly, feeling the last of my patience slipping away. "No, Megan, you're the one making the mistake. I deserve better than this, someone who respects me, who doesn't cheat and lie behind my back. I'm tired of your bitchy attitude, your lies, your manipulations. You've shown me who you really are, and I'm not sticking around for it." I told her she needed to leave. Not forever, maybe, but for a long time. I wanted her out of my house, out of my life, so I could start healing. And she did, with her usual bitchy attitude, throwing a fit, trying to blame me for everything, trying to guilt me into changing my mind. But I didn't budge. I knew this was the end. As she stormed out the door, I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with heartbreak. I had finally faced the truth. I had taken control. I knew I would be okay, even if it hurt like hell right now. I learned that trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to repair. But I also learned that I was stronger than I thought, strong enough to walk away from a betrayal that cut so deep it felt like my heart was torn in two. From this point on, I promised myself I wouldn't let anyone treat me like that again. I'd rebuild, I'd move on, and I'd find someone who respected and valued me, not someone who lied, cheated, and dismissed my feelings like Megan did. It was a brutal lesson, but one I'd carry with me for the rest of my life. Because at the end of the day, nobody, no matter how bitchy or manipulative, deserves to be betrayed like that. And I'd finally learned to stand up for myself.